The sun was still high when Ryan noticed her walking alone along the shoulder of an empty highway, carrying a worn backpack and moving as if every step was taking her farther away from a life she no longer wanted. Cars rushed past her, their tires humming against the hot pavement, but she never looked back. Ryan slowed his motorcycle, watching her carefully from a distance. Something about the way she walked told him this was not an ordinary afternoon walk. She looked exhausted, frightened, and strangely determined all at once. He pulled over several yards ahead, removed his helmet, and waited rather than rushing toward her. When she finally reached him, she looked at the motorcycle, then at him, and with a tired half-smile asked if this was how he picked up girls. Ryan almost laughed, but the sadness in her eyes stopped him. He realized that behind the joke was someone who desperately needed to know whether the world still had a safe place for her. If you believe that kindness can give someone a second chance when they need it most, take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Dot. Sometimes one small act of kindness can become the beginning of an entirely different life. Ryan was 31 and had spent most of his adult life working with his hands. He repaired motorcycles at a small garage on the edge of town, a place with an old metal roof, faded signs, and a narrow office where he kept his tools, invoices, and a photograph of his late father. He had never been the kind of man who trusted easily. Years earlier, his father had died unexpectedly, leaving Ryan with debts and a struggling business. Since then, he had learned to measure people by their actions rather than their promises. He had also learned that loneliness could hide behind a perfectly ordinary face. The young woman standing beside his motorcycle introduced herself as Syra. She said she had been walking for hours because her phone had died and she had nowhere she wanted to go. She did not ask for money, food, or a ride. That was what made Ryan more concerned. People who had nothing left often stopped asking for things because they had become convinced that nobody would help anyway. Ryan kept a respectful distance and offered to call someone for her. She immediately shook her head. Her eyes moved toward the road behind them, as if she expected someone to appear. Instead of pressing her, Ryan offered to take her to a public cafe near the town entrance where she could charge her phone and decide what to do next. He told her she could refuse, and he would leave without asking questions. After a long silence, Syra agreed. She climbed onto the motorcycle, keeping plenty of distance between them, and Ryan drove slowly toward town during the bright afternoon. At the cafe, Syra finally charged her phone. Dozens of missed calls appeared on the screen, but she did not return any of them. She ordered tea and stared through the window. Ryan sat at another table, giving her space. After nearly 20 minutes, she finally explained that she had left home after discovering that the relative she trusted most had been using her savings and pressuring her to sign documents she did not understand. When she refused, the situation became threatening enough that she decided to leave. She had spent the previous night in a cheap roadside motel, then started walking because she was afraid to stay anywhere connected to the people she was trying to escape. Ryan listened without interrupting. He did not tell her that everything would be fine because he knew sometimes those words were too easy. Instead, he told her that she deserved to make decisions without being frightened into them. He offered to help her contact a local women's support organization and, if she wanted, he could arrange a safe ride there. Syra looked surprised. She had expected questions, suspicion, or perhaps someone trying to take advantage of her situation. She had not expected patience. The next morning, Ryan returned to the garage and found Syra waiting outside. She had nowhere permanent to stay, and the support center could help her with temporary accommodation and legal guidance, but she needed somewhere safe for the day. Ryan offered her a simple job at the garage office, sorting receipts and organizing customer records, with fair pay and clear boundaries. He made it clear that the offer was employment, not charity, and that she could leave whenever she found something better. Syra accepted. For the next several weeks, something slowly changed. Ryan discovered that Syra was remarkably organized and had once studied business administration before family problems forced her to abandon college. She discovered that Ryan's rough exterior hid an unusually generous heart. He remembered every customer's name, fixed small problems without charging elderly people, and quietly helped teenagers who could not afford repairs. They began talking more, but never rushed anything. Their connection grew through ordinary moments, morning coffee before opening the garage, laughter over a stubborn motorcycle engine, afternoons spent organizing invoices, and quiet drives through town when supplies needed to be collected. The highway where they first met became a strange landmark in both their lives. It was the place where Syra had believed she was walking toward an uncertain future. It was also the place where someone had finally stopped without demanding anything from her. But just when life began to feel stable, the past returned. One afternoon, a black car stopped outside the garage. A man stepped out and asked for Syra. Rayan immediately recognized the fear on her face. The man claimed he was a family member and said Syra had stolen money and documents. He demanded that she come with him. Rayan did not argue or threaten him. He simply told Syra to stay inside the office while he contacted the appropriate authorities and the support organization already helping her. The accusation turned out to be false. The documents showed that Syra had not stolen anything. In fact, evidence began to reveal that someone had been attempting to misuse her identity and savings. The investigation took time, but for the first time, Syra had people standing beside her who cared about the truth rather than controlling her choices. The experience left her shaken. That evening, she sat outside the garage while the sun descended behind the distant hills. Rayan sat several feet away, saying nothing. Eventually, Syra admitted that she had spent years believing she had to survive everything alone. She said the hardest part of that highway had not been the heat, the traffic, or the distance. It had been the belief that nobody would stop. Rayan looked at the road and told her that sometimes people do stop. Sometimes they simply need to be brave enough to notice someone who is struggling. Months passed. Syra eventually returned to college through a scholarship program and continued working part-time at the garage. She became more confident, started managing the shop's accounts, and helped Rayan modernize the business. The small garage slowly became successful. They added another mechanic, renovated the office, and began offering apprenticeships to young people who needed a chance. Their relationship also changed, but it was never built on rescue or dependence. Syra had rebuilt her own life. Rayan had simply been one person who stood nearby when she needed support. Their feelings grew naturally from respect, trust, and countless ordinary days. They learned that real affection was not about saving someone or being saved. It was about choosing to stand beside each other while both people continued becoming stronger. One bright afternoon, almost a year after that first encounter, Rayan and Syra found themselves driving along the same highway. The weather was clear, the road was peaceful, and the fields on either side were green after recent rain. Rayan slowed near the exact place where he had first seen her walking alone. Syra looked toward the roadside and smiled. She remembered the backpack, the dead phone, the fear, and the joke she had made when she first saw him. Back then, she had used humor to protect herself because she did not know whether he was safe. Now she understood that the moment had changed both of their lives. They stopped for a few minutes. Neither needed to say much. The highway looked completely different in the afternoon light, even though it was exactly the same road. Syra realized that sometimes places do not change. People do. The road that once represented escape now represented possibility. Rayan had thought he was simply stopping to help a stranger. He never imagined that one decision would lead to a new employee, a trusted friend, a successful business partnership, and eventually the person who would become the most important part of his life. Syra had thought she was walking away from everything. She had not realized she was walking toward a future she had never been given the chance to imagine. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes that kindness still matters, and subscribe to Dot. Your support helps stories like this reach people who may need a little hope today. And before you leave, please comment one word that describes what you felt while listening to this story. Maybe it is kindness, hope, second chance, or simply believe. Your comment may remind someone else that they are not alone. Because sometimes, the most important moment in a person's life begins with something incredibly small. A stranger slowing down. A question asked without judgment. A hand extended without expecting anything in return. Rayan did not know who Syra was when he first saw her walking beside that highway. He did not know her story, her fears, or the future waiting for her. He only knew that someone was struggling, and he had a choice. He could keep driving. Or he could stop. He stopped. And sometimes, that is how a second chance begins.